But let me just go into some of the other stuff that has been part of this partnership, right? This sort of crony capitalism on steroids between the American government, often the federal government, and big tech or big corporations like Disney, right? So going all the way back to the Cold War, right, when DARPA, which began as the Advanced Research Project Agency, right, was sort of working to beat the Soviets. We had this idea that you could churn out these products, these technologies that were dual use, which is to say they give you guns and butter, right? You have something that works for the government, it's made in America, and then it also can be sold to benefit business and so on and so forth. In principle, right, a fine idea. Nothing wrong with the government, having an industrial policy. All of these things were instrumental in Reagan's, fight against the Soviet Union in the Cold War itself. As this principle got sort of enshrined in government, however, you end up with companies that become kind of like little appendages of the government, or else at least the government contracts them out to do things that the government wants to do. So a great example of this is after September 11th, right? We had this thing called the Total Information Awareness Program. The idea was that you were going to monitor and track potential terrorists, right? You made the people out there who are domestic terrorists, we need to keep an eye on them. But guess who was invited in to help build the Total Information Awareness Program and keep all of these tabs on Americans? Google, to the tune of $2.07 million, right? And this was only the beginning of the government handing things to Google, saying, you come in here, right, and help track Americans. It's because we have an interest now in stopping terrorism. And so you should be able to, all sorts of things that we now think of as kind of just the digital revolution. It's just, these businesses making this great tech, right? All sorts of things have their origin in government subsidy and actual deals with the government for its own interests. It gives money to Google. This is how, Google Street View, for example, the thing that they can just like beam a satellite down and see down to the level of the street what's going on here. All of these things come from massive investments. And at this point, the government now invests close to $100 million a year in information technology. Now, I'm not saying that this is some kind of sinister conspiracy, right, that they kind of were trying to build this massive tech empire to keep tabs on you. But all of these things have externalities, right? They have consequences beyond just what the government is trying to do with them. And one thing that they do is they build up these corporations like Google, like Twitter, like Facebook into para-government entities. That is to say, para means alongside, right? So these are entities, companies that act as sort of little governments alongside our real government, which, remember, is elected, right? The whole point of America is that we choose our representatives. And when the government starts to delegate its job to private enterprise, then those enterprises no longer become private. They become little, corporate wings of the state. And we've actually seen this in practice, not just in Disney kind of getting its own little government, but listen to the way that Jen Psaki talks about, weaponizing social media censorship to shut down views that the Biden administration doesn't like. I'm going to play you two clips now of Jen Psaki talking about quote unquote COVID misinformation, right? So when people are talking about the risks of the vaccine, when they're sharing things that, maybe that they have like one case where something went wrong. And again, it doesn't matter, the truth or the falsehood of what these people are saying, because of course, misinformation, like all kinds of speech, is protected under the First Amendment, right? You can say false things under the First Amendment. That's allowed. It's part of the freedom of speech. If that doesn't exist, then freedom of speech is under threat. Here's Jen Psaki saying, how she and her administration, how Biden's administration, are targeting posts on Facebook for deletion and elimination.
The false narrative that remains active out there about COVID-19 vaccines causing infertility, something we've seen out there flowing on the internet quite a bit, in other places as well, which has been disproven time and time again. This is troubling, but a persistent narrative that we and many have seen, and we want to know that the social media platforms are taking steps to address it. That is inaccurate, false information. If you are a parent, you would look at that information and that would naturally raise concerns, but it's inaccurate. And that is an example of the kind of information that we are flagging or raising.
That we are the kind of information that we are flagging. She's saying this is false, it's misinformation. We don't want it out there. And we are flagging it to try and get companies like Facebook to do our dirty work for us. We can't shut people down. The First Amendment applies to the government, and therefore we can't ourselves reach out and snuff these voices out of existence. And so we're reaching out to our para-government entities, right? We're trying to get these companies, which again, were built up over the years, not simply by their own endeavor, but also by government favoring, right? By the government sort of giving them money to do stuff that the government wants them to do, right? And she is then saying, well, so now you know, fair is fair. This is our deal. Like, you need to cut out misinformation. Now, again, look, I'm pro-COVID vaccine. Like, I think you should be free to make your choice, but I think you should get it. And that's not the point. Whether you're pro or anti-COVID vaccine, the point is you have a right to share your opinion. And when the government is colluding with companies that they helped to build into massive monopolistic businesses in order to shut you up, that is a violation of your God-given rights. Let's hear one more clip about how Psaki thinks about this stuff.
A couple of the steps that we have, that could be constructive for the public health of the country are providing for Facebook or other platforms to measure and publicly share the impact of misinformation on their platform and the audience it's reaching. Also with the public, with all of you, to create robust enforcement strategies that bridge their properties and provide transparency about rules. You shouldn't be banned from one platform and not others for providing misinformation out there.
I don't know if you've ever heard the line, "Will no one rid me of this meddlesome priest?" But this is a line that's attributed to Henry II, King of England, when he wanted to get rid of Thomas Becket. Somebody out there needs to do away with this guy, right? And of course, when the king says this, everybody leaps to attention. This is the way that they're talking now. What you really should do, what these companies that we helped build up should really do, is keep a blacklist so that no matter where you go, no matter which platform you try to go on, you can't get your dangerous, scary misinformation out there, right? These privileges and immunities and this money that was given to build these companies up was offered to these companies because the government thought that they would act in the interests of the government. And in Florida, when Disney is breaking that trust, right, DeSantis is saying, no, you don't. We gave you these privileges so that you would act in the interest of the people, and the government serves the people, so the government can revoke those privileges if you are not acting in their interest.